Thank you. Um,
Of course. Thank you.
yeah. Yes, my name's Rachel. Thanks for having me. I'm very new to this community, and actually Yaler asked if I would speak, and so here I am. I'm an oracle, which kind of means, well, means I'm like a cosmic librarian. So I have access to information from the past, present, and the future, and I help guide people to align with their highest expression. So I can do that on an individual basis or groups or organizations. First thing I want to say about this community, whether it's the crypto community or all the people involved creating DAOs, is that it's a very necessary thing to happen, very necessary things that to create for where society is going or where it needs to go. So if we look at the world on a large scale, it's coming out of this very distorted masculine period where it's all about power, being aggressive, being pushy, more centered on self, not centered on community. So we're falling out of that period and evolving or growing into a period more of a golden age where it's very community based. Instead of things being very masculine heavy, the masculine and feminine are held in balance. So there's more equality energetically within those communities. And how that's going to evolve is it's these little pockets, these little communities that start operating in that way that lead it for us on a global scale. So it's important that all these things are happening. It's like the transition team. You guys are like the transition team for what is going to evolve, what is all going to evolve into. I just want to touch a little bit about cryptocurrencies because it does affect community. For instance, I'll just talk about Ethereum for a moment. I'm a big fan of Ethereum because it is so community-based. And the thing with it, for it to become more stable, the community needs to grow. And once the community of people that have Ethereum grows, the currency will start to stabilize more. Until that happens, it's still going to keep fluctuating up and down. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. So how do we build the community so it stabilizes the currency the community is based off of and really engage more people outside of your technology world? I have no background in what you guys do, so I don't really know your lingo. But we grow those communities by making it more inviting, right? We need to make it more alluring to people who aren't part of the Web3 community. So a lot of that has to do with inviting more feminine aspects in. One thing that I see really powerful in these communities is that it's more circle-based. So there's not one person making all the choices, and it's, you know, like the patriarchal system where it's coming from the top down. It's very much we're all involved, we all contribute, we all have a role, and together we're progressing forward. And that kind of community is what's going to make it successful. There are people, I have to say, that aren't in their hearts that do exist in this community that are more self-involved, looking for, you know, more self-satisfaction or just making a lot of money. And that's not going to last. That's not something that's sustainable for what's going forward. So these kinds of communities you're creating where it's really about working together and everyone's contributing their part to make it run is something that we need to maintain to progress. At the same time, everything that you do, you have to think about it coming from your heart space, which means that it's always for the benefit of the community, never for the benefit of just yourself. The moment we start start moving from that place, the moment it all starts to fall back into what we're coming out of. I hope that makes sense. So, you all know what we're coming out of and what we're trying to get away from and what we're trying to create. So to keep that going, we have to make sure that we're staying integral with our values and what we want to see created. Because anything that we can imagine, whatever world we want to see exist, we have to make sure the steps we're taking are towards that vision and not just like, well, this will work for right now. Because the moment we start doing that, the moment we keep falling back into what was before. With that being said, because there are so many old structures still in place, there's a part of us that still need to play that old game in order to exist. We still have to cooperate with governments right now. We still have to adhere to some rules because, like I said, this is the transition team. So there's still a little bit of that we have to play with to not have to deal with it anymore. Some things that I think the community overall could consider more is how the DAOs present themselves. So presentation is I think for people that aren't in the community, really, really important. So if someone comes to your website or sees something that is attractive, how are they going to connect with what you're doing? Are they going to right away say, oh, this isn't for me? Or can they see a part of themselves? Can they join in with your vision, with your goals, with your values? In what way are they connecting with what you're doing? And that's important to consider. Also, the language you use around it. If the language is kind of in code for only people in the tech community to understand, it's not going to be inviting to anyone else. And that's an aspect of the feminine. The feminine is very inviting. It's nurturing of all, the entire community, not just a small community. The masculine is the structure, it's the protection, it's the rational mind, it puts everything in place. The feminine is the creativity, the flow. So that's what we need to bring more into this community, which will then in turn bring it more into the world. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, so just thinking about, the core values for just yourself first, but then the values of any organization you're a part of, and if they're completely aligned. If they're not completely aligned, either the values of the organization need to change, or you need to move to an organization whose values are aligned with your own. And then you can really actively help. Yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to say. I can take any questions or any kind of clarity anyone wants to ask about.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got two questions. So, obviously, as we're building these communities and as a transition team, we're pretty susceptible to outside influences. So, what's one of the way that we can kind of fight people that still have this profit over community mindset for the collective? How do we fight that?
So, ask that question again. So you're asking, how do we offset the influence of those who are more interested in money than building something for a community? Is that the question?
Yeah, like how can we make sure that the people that have that mindset aren't going to kind of manipulate our community in a way that gamifies it in their interest? How do you do that?
I mean, it's already happening. That's part of the games that are currently in place. There's a lot of manipulation. Like even I think what happened with the stock market yesterday and Ethereum, I mean, I don't think that was a mistake at all. I think it was a way of manipulating things and putting power back to where someone wants it to go. there's only so much of it you can avoid. How you can kind of fight against it is not aligning yourself with those people. Don't make those people a part of your community. You have to make sure you're working with people who aren't interested in just making a ton of money, but those that are really interested in helping the world progress forward, because that's the direction it needs to go. So what I'm saying is, if we're compromising our values and deciding to connect with those people, the life cycle of an organization is going to be shorter, right? So we want to try to create the best version of whatever we're doing right now and not wait 10 years, so that when the life cycle of whatever we're doing now is over, whatever's created out of that can then really progress forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And do you have any advice, like tactics that could help communities or projects stay more aligned and kind of make sure that they're all working together towards the same goal?
That's a really great question. And, it really, it's going to look different for every organization, because it has a lot to do with the people working inside of it. It first has to start with you individually, right? So if you can make sure that you are always aligned with your values and you're always making choices from your heart space and not just from like your rational thinking mind, then you can, that's going to have a ripple effect in the community that you're in, right? And so if every person in the organization is acting from that space, the whole organization is going to, level up, if you will. If that's not happening in the community, then it's the organization. There's no way for it to progress forward. So it really depends on who makes up the community.
Can I add something?
Yes.
But we shouldn't forget about the types like Bill Gates. He was all about the money for like 20 years, and people hated him. It looked like that's it, but he had an agenda probably from the start. What he's doing now, what he can do now, is because he was able to accumulate some substantial sum. So it's not easy to detect people that maybe seem at the first glance that they are more after money than after community, because Bill Gates from software, but then you shouldn't forget people that work on hardware, and this really needs structure, organization, resources. It's a different game than living in virtual reality on top of this hardware and everything. So these people also are about the community, but they operate differently and they are needed. So it's a thin line, but I agree with everything you said. It's hard to...
Yes, it's true. It is a thin line. Bill Gates, for instance, he used to be much more about just making a ton of money. And now obviously he is really interested in helping people, because he's in a place where he doesn't have to worry about much. So that's a great example of someone who's kind of personally evolved into a place where he's functioning from a higher place than just like worried or interested in only making money. So there is a thin line, and it is kind of hard to figure that out just meeting somebody, but you really want to look at their actions. The other important thing is to allow ourselves to be fluid, for organizations to be fluid and shift and change as needed. Nothing needs to be concrete right now, especially, the world basically is kind of on a lockdown, and it's not going to be the last time people are going to be bunkering down in their homes and not leaving. We have to be fluid with how these organizations are forming and how we're acting within them and who we collaborate with and who we don't. It doesn't have to be concrete all the time.
Yeah, or the radical move to something new. It's a combination, and it's a new alternative, because like cryptocurrencies in the start, everybody thought we will pay each other in that, buy coffee and everything, but this won't happen. It's a different purpose, and the normal fiat will stay probably for a long time. And this is an alternative that's only promised the world. It's a better currency, but it at the end it seems to be uh, a great force for community coordination, and DAOs are the real thing, and everything on top of that. The currency is not the main, but it was sold like this, and it's okay. So things change, and the fiat world will stay. And here also this way of organization more fluid. It's like more of I think Austrian way of economics and systems, subsystems, and everything. But the hierarchical structures are not going away, and they are needed. But this is a welcome change, and more the future than the old way. But the old way is going to still stay in some so interesting times.
Yeah, it's going to eventually collapse. The governments and the current financial
It should be soft collapse for the good of all of us, because any collapse is like, maybe we are slowly collapsing now, because we saw with coronavirus the correct information came from the network, not from the top officials. But still,
well,
yeah,
it's not going to come from top officials, and that's the thing. Like the governments, okay. There's a lot you just said. I want to try to get to everything. Yeah, a lot of countries in Europe are already working in more of that matriarchal system, more circular system, where the community is more supported. You know, America is an awful demonstration of the patriarchal society. Yeah, so a lot of these systems are already kind of in place in Europe, and Europe will be leading the way for what can happen, or they'll be leading the way for change. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember everything you said.
Just to add something that you just now said, there is one guy or two, I forgot their names, but 1 year ago they were big, like glitch in the matrices, and he invented DivX codec and mp3.com, and he's working on complex systems. But one of the things they said is the future is more feminine than masculine. That this is one of the big things coming up, of course. So I agree.
Yes, and yes, it's absolutely true. The thing about the currencies is that the currencies again are going to keep changing. The stock market as it currently exists isn't going to be the same way 50 years from now, which is why we need to allow ourselves and the organizations we're forming to be fluid and change with it all. So we can't just be stuck with one idea and be stubborn. That's like an old mentality. We have to allow things to flow and shift as everything in the world does at the same time.
Great, thanks. I'm done asking comments.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, Dave, I think you brought up another great point about, we're all kind of operating at different levels of involvement and engagement within an organization. So, someone that is making this like their day job and they're working really hard at it is going to need more out of the organization than someone that's casually doing it or just checking it out. So thank you very much, Rachel. I wanted to also kind of ask, is there a way that people can follow up with you or get engaged, or are there any other transitional groups that you're working with currently?
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm helping a bit with MetaGame, just kind of in the background, not so much in the foreground. And then people can find me on my website, homestealing.com, and they can, if they want to connect more, they can connect with me there. Are there any other questions from anybody else?
Yeah, I just had one comment about the thing with Bill Gates. Like, I think with the tools we're building now, like it's kind of been the first time in humanity's history where like more people have access to the entire world's information than they have access to clean water. Versus like when Bill Gates was around, like there was a certain kind of informational asymmetry that Bill Gates had in terms of the opportunities that he had and access to resources that he had that not everyone in the world had or even knew they could have. So with the tools we're building now, like the internet gave us access to data, and with blockchains we now have access to like trustless coordination and value transfer through the internet. So like this conference is a perfect example where no one spent a dime on this conference. This was put together completely for free in 2 weeks, and put on by a bunch of random people on the internet who don't know each other. And we came together and had this like information share that is never would have been possible before. So now that the amount of value that Bill Gates accumulated, like let's say we had like that value distributed among like 1,000 people, and they had the tools to be enabled to make change and do good things and be rewarded for it. And where the community, the game theory of the community was like just designed to reward like collaborative and positive sum collaboration. Like I think if we could have 1,000 Bill Gates and enable like thousands of people to be like Bill Gates, then that's way more powerful than like this sort of like top down, like completely like hierarchical like way of doing things. So I think it's good that there's good people, but if we can bring more opportunity and you use these tools to bring more opportunity to all the other good people that do exist in the world but don't have opportunity, we'll be able to make like more change than we ever have been able to before.
That's great. Can I just comment something? 1,000 Bill Gates, it's possible, but better not, because Bill Gates had to pull some really dirty tricks along the way in the first 10 years, and now this is not needed anymore. So things changed, but it all started maybe with a computer on every desk. So these pioneers, Jobs and Gates, they started off, but they had to pull many dirty tricks to conquer the world. But now, when it's more organic communities it's like a cells in the network, and if you pull dirty tricks, then you're out. It works differently. So it's
I think what he is referring to is people with money wanting to help, and there are tons of people with money who are interested in seeing the systems shift, who are tired of seeing people suffer and not able to help themselves. We just have to again expand this community to reach those people, because there's plenty of people with money who do want to see things change, and it's all about how we're presenting these organizations that are being formed, and what outlets are we connecting with to reach them so that the community can expand. So I think that's what he means more, is not how Bill Gates got to where he is, but but those people with money that can help this movement expand.
Can I add one more issue just quickly, then I'm done? What about the idealism of it all now in early stages, but then even with these same people that are here now and many more people coming in later, but these people that are here now, maybe they don't have a lot of money, they don't need it, but at some point in life, when they're 10 years older, they will need some money, and they will have to start earning a little bit, and then the new people will see that they are doing very well, why the new people are not doing so well immediately. So I think this within the community there is some incoming problems, not now, in 5 or 10 years, and also there has to be a way for like everybody that's doing something here to actually get enough or regular income from somehow.
Yes,
But
that's the other thing. I know there's a lot of people in this community that devote a lot of their time to make these things happen or develop these new technologies, and it's imperative that there's an equal energetic exchange. And how that is for each person might look different. Sometimes it's being paid, sometimes it's just trading something, but everyone needs to be taken care of. So there's no self-sacrifice. No one's just giving up all their time for this and not being energetically compensated in some way, because that's not the kind of atmosphere or community we want to form. We need to take care of everyone who's involved. So if someone's struggling, that means we're not doing our part within the organization. So we do have to think about those people who are devoting their time and making sure that they're getting compensated for it. And again, what that looks like for each organization might be different.
Yeah. I have a friend, one person in Slovenia that I said, "Do you know Ethereum?" A long time ago, and he said yes. It was the only one that I didn't tell him or her about Ethereum, and he's energetically the perfect guy and helping all the time. But his wallet is a lot more emptier than this would. So I don't know if he's doing something wrong, or you have to think in some a bit different way. So it's gonna be challenging also. So it doesn't come automatically, and maybe he struggles getting food for his new little animal and stuff like this. And um, it's
Yeah.
okay, but it's not automatic. There has to be some mechanisms or options.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a huge part of what we're trying to do with MetaGame is like we realize that, even within like the MetaCartel ecosystem that like none of us had a lot of money. Like MetaCartel put about $60,000 into grants, which is like nothing compared to the hundreds of millions that, other people in the community have spent.
That's great.
But MetaCartel has resulted in like way more value creation and way more things that people are actually using than anything else, and that's purely as a result of the community effects, right? So that's what we realize is like if you can coordinate communities together and focus on this idea of like collaboration and positive sum collaboration, then like that like completely overpowers the money aspect of it. So you can enable people who are just in their like bedrooms at home to like band together and start like a global revolution without a lot of money, just because they have the ability to coordinate. And like the comment I made earlier about Bill Gates, it was actually not about the money at all, but about like enabling people who don't have that level of money to still get access to opportunities and get access to make an impact that they normally would not be able to because of a lack of money. And at the end of the day too is like once we can actually show that we're creating a lot of value by bringing these communities together, then like the value, we can start flowing the value to those people who are creating the value as well. So at MetaGame, that's kind of our main goal, is to like actually like figure out a way to get people paid, because there's kind of like a imbalance between like where the money is being spent and where like the value is being created. So if you can kind of use crypto economics and these like tools that we're creating to like fix that balance and like actually funnel the money to the right places, then um, uh, it'll enable people to be able to do these things and encourage community collaboration and build this stuff and get paid for it, and survive off of it, and create opportunities for others as well.
Yeah, but now the most important thing is just creation. I'm okay for a year or two or more, and I just want to code now. So I don't talk usually about this, but I thought now it was a bit worth mentioning because it is important later on.
Yeah, for sure. Like, if whoever's interested in like working on these social experiments, working on ways to like map funds to people who are creating value, and the whole idea of metagame is like we can just model real life as like a MMO RPG game, just like World of Warcraft or all these things. Is like we have the technology to make real life like that now too, and track people's contributions, track people's impact, and based on that we can then like see kind of in a fair and transparent way who had what impact, and
And but think about it, not looking very weird to the outside people, because I said last week to the current premier of Slovenia, everything is going to be virtual, because I met them at some place and they looked at me like I was crazy. And of course, it seems crazy to most of the people now. It will become normal, but it has to be really. It should come from nowhere slowly, and because not everybody will buy the idea of somebody else operating like a big game. It's weird potentially, but it's not. So challenges here also, the clash with the other mindset, because guys are younger than these politicians and everybody, and it's not gonna be just extremely easy all the time. That's what I think.
I wanted to say something about jobs or work that people do. There's a lot of people that are afraid to go towards their passion because they're not sure they're going to get paid or survive if they start doing something that they actually care about or are passionate about. And so, this is just all fear-based because we have to be able to take care of ourselves, especially in this country. In the US, there aren't social systems in place to support people if they're not working all day long. So this virus, this coronavirus, will unveil a lot about our current structures in place. But so if we want to get more people involved and get those who are worried about like being able to support themselves working in this community, we have to make it, we have to shift things. We have to find those resources, those people who are willing to invest in this, so those people, we can bring those people on board and make sure they're compensated. So they're just otherwise they're just going to be in fear, and that's not you can't be in creative process if you're worried about how you're going to feed yourself.